Welcome back to Proxy, everybody, and today we are going to be diving in to a Seer Council list, and we're going to be talking a little bit about the faction and the play style of it. So a lot of you guys have been asking for a Seer Council video. I have made several of them in the past, but I never really went down and dirty into the details. So in this video, we're going to be analyzing a recent list that I devised that has had, some success in my local game store, as well as some success in some games on Tabletop Simulator. And on top of going into the list, the details of it and stuff like that, we're going to be looking at how it plays on the battlefield, how to deploy it, and the general strategies behind it. So without further ado, let us go ahead and dive into a quick overview of the detachment itself to give you guys a couple of reminders about what it is. So Seer Council is essentially a detachment where its detachment rule is you get extra stratagems to use. So essentially, you roll 6 dice, those correspond to certain stratagems in the detachment, and you get to use one of those for 1 CP less, essentially for free, every single time you use that stratagem, which, can actually be quite awesome. You're basically getting 6 free CP throughout the course of the game, and of course, you can use it as many times as you want. It's not limited per turn or anything like that. So, with that being said, some of the enhancements are also very good. We have Lucid Eye, which is a very good enhancement, which allows you to basically change the numbers of the detachment bonus depending on the matchup. That could be very good. And you also have the Torque of Moray Hague, which is much better now, as I recently revealed in the latest Aeldari FAQ. Now players must pay the CP, which is an additional CP, if they use a stratagem within 12 inches of the bearer. So pretty powerful. It's essentially a Vect ability, but in my honest opinion, a little bit better because of the fact that you can just put it on a regular warlock. In addition, we have several stratagems which allow us to really control the battlefield in a big way. We have Presentiment of Dread, which allows us to force a battle shock test on an enemy unit on an objective or just anywhere, but it's mostly going to be used to deny points to your opponent or give points to yourself. If a friendly psyker has line of sight to it within 18 inches, that's very strong. We have Forewarned, which allows us to get -1 to hit, -1 to wound in close combat. We have Isha's Fury, which is essentially an upgraded grenade. If an enemy unit moves within 9 inches of a friendly psyker, you don't need line of sight for it. It's just 3 ups, cause mortal wounds, and you roll 6 dice. We have, of course, Unshrouded Truth, which allows us to teleport a unit anywhere on the battlefield outside of 9 inches of enemy units in the movement phase, as long as that unit has not moved. We have, and I'm drawing a blank on the stratagem. Oh, yes, of course. So we have Psychic Shield, which gives us an 18-inch lone op on our infantry unit. And lastly, we have the ability to essentially ignore cover on a shooting unit. So we can ignore his cover, and we get crit AP on wound rolls. So essentially, when you roll a 6 to wound, you get an additional AP. So those are the 6 stratagems of the detachment, and they're pretty powerful. I honestly can say that every one of them is good. Now, having said that, let's look at the list. So every good Seer Council list will start with Eldrad. He goes with Storm Guardians typically and a Warlock Conclave. He's very powerful with Doom, allows your army to wound much easier. And he also has Mind War, which is pretty decent as well. But the most important part about Eldrad is he gives you an extra CP. So, of course, your characters are going to be pretty CP hungry in this list. Your army is going to be wanting to use as many stratagems as possible, and Eldrad allows you to do that. We do have Fuegan, and he's going to be joining a big unit of fire dragons, and he works perfectly with the extra range that he gives fire dragons and Unshrouded Truth, that is the teleport. So essentially, the Exarch of the unit and Fuegan himself get a 12-inch melta range, and their melta damage is pretty damn good. So Fuegan and 10 Fire Dragons work perfectly. You also save a little bit of points from not having a full unit, and you can split fire if you want to. You know, you don't always want to do that, but if you're going up against an army with a lot of vehicles, you might have to at one point in the game. However, Fuegan and 10 Fire Dragons are typically enough to kill 2 lighter vehicles if you get decent rolls. Malgan Raw is in the list. He's in this list for a very specific reason. So, the first reason is his shrapnel ability with the Tempest Launcher is very good at putting pressure on opponents who are hiding behind terrain, especially if they're hiding multiple small units behind terrain, as most armies will do. He's also just really good on his own, being able to have dev wounds and cause battle shock at -1 to enemy units. It doesn't always happen, but when it does go off on something important, somebody trying to complete the sabotage action, for example, if you can, get somebody to basically fail a battle shock test when they're being, when they're the target of a sabotage, you can deny your enemy points. If somebody is trying to burn down an objective, then you can always, prevent them from doing so as well. So Magwan Ra is pretty good in a number of scenarios, and he's pretty good in melee as well in the late game, and you can definitely use him in a more aggressive way in this list on turns 4 and 5. We have an Autarch for basically a free heroic intervention. They're going to be attached to the Howling Banshees, of course, so reason why you put an Autarch with them is so they have higher damage. Their heroic intervention is much stronger, and they have a higher trading potential with the Autarch. So much better as a defensive unit. And the Autarch also gives a couple of other things like a Dragon Fusion Gun for a little bit of extra anti-large and stuff like that. He also gives, grenades to the unit of Howling Banshees, which makes them much more versatile. Next, we have a solo Warlock with the Torque of Moria Hague for that good CP reduction. It recently got a buff, so I'm glad to see that. Recently, this list was slightly changed. I had the Lucid Eye in here before, and I had a couple of different units, but now I have the Torque because the Torque is just that much better. For Battleline, we have a unit of Storm Guardians. Of course, they guard Eldrad and the big Warlock contingent that we're going to have in that unit. Now, as for the infantry, this is the bread and butter of the list. We have 3 units of Dark Reapers with Tempest Launchers. Now, 2 of these units, of course, can have missile launchers if you want to, if you're wanting to build a list that's similar to this. However, the strategy that I had in mind involved putting pressure on your opponent's backline units, making them and forcing them to engage you more liberally, and then, of course, we can take advantage of that because we can teleport all over the battlefield with Unshrouded Truth. So that's the idea behind it. I think Tempest Launchers are good against pretty much anything Xenos. Any 1 wound infantry, they're going to be good against. They're not that good against Marines, but when you have 3 of them, they tend to rack up some damage over the course of 3 or 4 turns. And actually, realistically, we're going to expect our Dark Reaper Tempest Launchers to kill about 1 unit in an entire game, and that's going to be pinpointed towards a unit that is in the back line. So we're going to be trying to eliminate either a unit of infiltrators or intercessors or battle sisters or whatever is going to be on the back objective. We're going to put pressure on your opponent so that you can then teleport, and if your opponent doesn't do anything about it, then it will easily win you the game on turns 4 and 5 if your opponent just can't respond. So we have those Tempest Launchers in there. We have our unit of 10 Fire Dragons with Fuegan. We have another unit of 5 Fire Dragons we can either just keep or put in reserve. This unit is more of a trading unit of Fire Dragons in case our opponent has something fast that can fly over our other models when we're move blocking vehicles and monsters and stuff like that. So we have that ready here, just as a little bit of a countermeasure. We have 1 unit of Howling Banshees. Again, usually people take multiple units of Howling Banshees, but I feel like if we're using a more defensive strategy, we only really need 1. We have 1 unit of Rangers, again, along those same lines. We're going to be mostly a defensive force, so we're going to use our Rangers as a move blocking screening unit and objective, unit if we do go first, instead of the typical, 2 Ranger kind of infiltrate screen, because we're only going to try to screen our own expansion objective. We have a 4-man Warlock Conclave. Again, this is just to put as much power into the Storm Guardian unit as possible so that we can have a really substantial heavy punch when we go in there. And actually, it works really well against things like Knights because we're now at 5d6 plus 10 Flamer attacks for the unit, on top of our fusion guns, on top of Eldrad, the Shuriken pistols, which actually with Doom are not terrible, and our Flamers, our regular, Storm Guardian Flamers. So we have a lot of power in that unit, so I figured I'd go with the 4-man block there, even though it did get a price increase. Lastly, we have 2 units of Warp Spiders for our infantry for move blocking and screening purposes. Again, there is no better unit in the game for blocking enemy vehicles from being able to engage your army. For our mounted choices, we have 1 unit of Shroud Runners for early game pressure and, of course, objectives and move blocking and stuff like that. Shroud Runners are just a good all-around unit. I've said this before in other videos. I typically try to take at least 1 unit of Shroud Runners in every list I make because they're just so damn versatile and so strong in the early game for a relatively few amount of points. We have 2 Warlock Skyrunners, and these are going to be defensive or objective style units that are going to essentially make it harder for opponents to come in on us fast because of the fact that they can use Ish's Fury to generate mortal wounds against enemy units. And they're also just an easy way to spread your stratagems out so that you can target your other infantry units that don't include Psykers. Lastly, we have 2 Warwalkers in the list, Bright Lance and Star Cannons. I mean, you could have 2 Bright Lances on either one, doesn't really matter, but I figured I had enough anti-large in this list already, so the Star Cannons are just to ensure that we have enough shots to ensure hits, so that the rest of our army can get extra AP against enemy units, which is really strong against high armor targets like Space Marines and so forth. So that is the list, and basically what we're planning to achieve with the list is we're going to play it kind of slow. Essentially, this is a list that wants to go all 5 turns, and on turns 4 and 5, it really wants to turn up the gas, turn up the heat, and fully exploit your opponent's weaknesses. So early on in the game, you're going to be doing things like move blocking, screening, protecting your home objective, protecting your expansion objective, and not really going after your opponent's objective or their expansion unless they give you an easy opportunity to do so. So if you go first, for example, it would be really easy to kill a unit of, Corsairs or Scouts or, any other, or Kroot or any other thing like that, Poxwalkers, whatever, that is going to be on their expansion trying to, basically claim that for themselves. So, unless something like that happens, we're going to try to just maintain our main 2 objectives, and every once in a while we may try to venture out, but most of the time our army's just not equipped to hold the middle or their expansion objective in the early turns of the game. That will change in the later turns. Turns 4 and 5, fully expect to score max points on primary with this army list that we have here, unless something went really wrong. Now, what else do we have in this list? Well, like I said, we have a lot of early game pressure with Malgan Raw and the Tempest Launchers. They're going to be putting pressure on enemy units in their backfield, so your opponent will have to burn more resources or more valuable units to defend their home objective. And this is going to play right into our hands because the less resources your opponent has to engage us in the middle, the better we'll be in the later stages of the game, turns 4 and 5. Okay, so that's the idea behind the list. Is early game, we're going to play it really safe, conservative, and we're going to dominate our, home objective and our expansion. We're going to have the unit density, and we're going to have the, move blocking capabilities and overwatch capabilities to defend those 2 objectives. Anything else is really going to be a matter of time. We're just going to kind of play it safe and wait. And as your opponent has to score secondary objectives, and your opponent's going to want to score more primary than just their own expansion, they're going to use units to throw into the middle, and we're going to be able to counterattack those units and destroy them piecemeal. And really, if you look at the list, it's really designed to pick off things out in the open or things within line of sight. And we have a lot of different ways of forcing our opponents out into the open with clever Eldar trickery. So without further ado, since we've gone over the list, what's included and so forth, I am going to show you on Tabletop Simulator how I would play the first couple of turns of the game with this army and what the game plan for the rest of the game will be. And I think you guys will be able to see through the example how easy it is to control your opponent when you're running an army like this. Now, will you get dominating 100%, 50 points to 100-point victories every single game with this army style? Well, quite frankly, no. This army is built for competitive play. So high levels of competitive play where players are, smart about their moves, players aren't going to make too many mistakes, and you're going to have to play all 5 turns of the game, and you're not going to be able to make many mistakes yourself, if any, right? This is a very high skill cap army, being Seer Council. Having said that, if you learn to play this army right, even very skilled players are going to have a hard time tabling you or being able to dominate you on the battlefield. Oftentimes, you'll be in close games. Even if you lose, you're going to have a very close and competitive game with your opponent. And that is, of course, a great thing because Warhammer 40K, you don't always win all your games, right? The best you can hope for really is a great game that is fun and that is close. And that's what this list is really meant to do. It's meant to play at a high competitive level where the games are going to be, anywhere from 5 to 10 points in difference. And here's the other thing, and it's kind of a cool thing about this list, is that if it goes second, the way you're playing, oftentimes you will be benefiting from challenger cards, and challenger cards are super easy to score, and they just give you extra points. So by the end of the game, if you go second and you cap your, in turns 4 and 5, you cap your victory points out with your primary objectives and your secondary objectives, those extra challenger points often will determine the game. So, say what you will about challenger cards, but they're in the game, you got to play with them, and this army does a really good job scoring them. All right, guys, so what we're going to do now, we're going to hop into Tabletop Simulator, and I'm going to show you how to set up this army, basically where to put your units and so forth, and why, and then I'm going to show you an enemy setup with, pretty reasonable accuracy as to where your opponent might put their units and what they might do during the first couple turns. And our opponent is going to be, of course, Blood Angels, and I have had so much experience against Blood Angels because I've played them in real life more times than I can count against a very adequate Blood Angels player. So, without further ado, let us go ahead and dive into Tabletop Simulator in just a second. Alrighty guys, so here we are on Tabletop Simulator, and for this example, I thought I would go ahead and go through my, kind of thoughts about the army, deployment, how to play it and stuff against an actual enemy army. So, on the other side of the battlefield, we have Blood Angels. So this is I would say, a rather basic Blood Angel army. You have a lot of Sanguinary Guard, you have Dante, you have a ball, 3 Ball Predators, which Ball Predators are really effective, so you're probably going to see at least 2 of these on the battlefield in this particular game. I have 3. You're going to see, Squad of Intercessors for sticky, pretty standard. Squad of Infiltrators for 12-inch deep strike denial. More Sanguinary Guard. The Sanguinor, you're going to have Mephiston, who's hiding over here, like the little punk he is. And then you're going to have maybe a Brutalis Dreadnought. To be honest with you, I don't know what else they would pick in this army. Blood Angels players probably know better than me. My buddy has one. He uses one in his list. So, yeah, that's what we have. And maybe some Death Company or something like that to back them up. But again, army style can change. I just really want to show you guys more of a how to play and stuff like that rather than this is the most competitive enemy army that you can face. So, and also Squad of Scouts, protecting their expansion objective, which is another common thing that you will see in competitive armies. You'll usually see some sort of infiltration unit like Scouts in Marine armies. Okay, so what do we have on our side of the board? Well, we went over the army list earlier, but the deployment is key here. Now, as you guys know, as I explained in the, army list part of this video, this is going to be the bait and switch army style for Seer Council. So the main idea of this army is we're going to use our 3 units of Dark Reapers with indirect fire to put our opponent in a position where they have to move out immediately and spread out right away. However, we are also at the same time going to be preventing them from moving on certain spots of the board and forcing them to engage in not so great scenarios. So basically forcing them to engage units that are not going to work out well for them. So, what do I mean by this? Well, as we can see from the Blood Angel army, because Blood Angels are typically on bigger bases and stuff, especially on these long ways boards, they're going to have trouble deploying spread out while also maintaining pressure on us. And as a Seer Council player, we're going to be playing for the long game, right? We don't want to just throw our units right into the fray and throw them to their deaths immediately, right? Because we're just not going to be able to trade well if we do that. We're going to play for the long game. And the Blood Angel player has several strong characters in the list. So the Sanguinor, Mephiston, and Dante are all pretty common picks. I think Dante may be a little bit more niche, but I personally think Dante's great. My buddy plays him all the time, and he's really frustrating to go up against. So basically our goal here from this army is we're going to be trying to force our opponent to open up their lines. So we can get our big unit of Storm Guardians, which are back here with Eldrad and the 5 Warlocks, into the back lines and seal the game. So turns 4 and turns 5 is where we're really going to try to put a nail in the coffin for our Blood Angel opponent. Now, how we're going to do this is we're going to prevent movement. We're going to constantly put pressure on our opponent with indirect fire. And then we're going to close in and trade efficiently. And basically, like I said earlier, we're going to force our opponent into bad situations. So, a couple of different scenarios can happen. If we go second, it's honestly changing nothing. And I would even say going second is better for us. Because, of course, we get to score at the end of turn 5 with our primary objectives, and we'll have more points at the end of the game. That's going to be a huge advantage. However, if we do go first, there are things we can do to make it really hard for our opponent to get out of their deployment zone, and we can really maximize our damage. So either way, whether we go first or second, we're going to have a good time. So if we go first, the first thing we can do is we can use our unit of Rangers here to essentially move block, right? Now, we're not going to be move blocking Assault Intercessors, but we have a strategy for those, right? And I'll go over it in a second, and I'll basically do the first turn with you guys as kind of a, little example on how to play the game in the first couple of turns. And we're going to, kind of move block them with certain units, and they're not really going to be able to move out of their deployment zone. And this is going to be beautiful, because if we go first, we have a little trick up our sleeves. We have Malgan Raw with a Dark Reaper with a Tempest Launcher. And what this is going to allow us to do is potentially proc the Shrapnel ability of Malgan Raw into multiple enemy units. And as we can see, the Infiltrators are a great pick for this, because not only are Infiltrators going to be a unit that they're going to use all game in the backfield, but they're a unit that is going to be in a central position in their backlines because they want to prevent us from trying to Unshrouded Truth into their backlines, right? And if you guys don't know, Unshrouded Truth is essentially a stratagem that allows us to deploy a unit anywhere outside of 9 inches, and Infiltrators are going to be used to stop that, right? Because your opponent does not want a big, heavy unit in their backfield that can just kill multiple of their units and just totally ruin their game plan. So you're going to have your opponent having Infiltrators set up to stop that, right? So if we go first, which we're going to pretend we go first, okay? Because typically speaking, going first nowadays is not the best. A lot of people know what to do when they go second. If we go second, the only thing our opponent is going to be able to do is kill Rangers. That's it, right? They're going to kill some Rangers, and they're going to be out in the open, and our units are going to be able to kill them pretty easily. So our opponent's just probably not going to fall for that. What they're going to do in their first turn, if they go first, is they're just going to set up for the next turn, which means they're going to probably spread out their guys to try to avoid the Maugan combo. But again, there's advantages and disadvantages to going first or second. So, oh, by the way, every well-designed list will be able to perform well going first or going second. So just keep that in mind when list building. If you're planning on going first, if you're building a list and you're like, this list is going to be really good if I go first, but you don't have a plan for going second, it's probably not a good list, or you have to rethink how you're going to move and position the army. So let's assume we go first, right? This is the probably worst result of what's going to happen. And Maugan Raw, right, is going to do a lot of damage in this scenario. So we're going to use this to our advantage. So we go first, right? So let me go ahead and get rid of the deployment zones here if we can do that. There we go. We go first. Let's draw our secondaries just for fun. Let's start the game. There we go. Okay. Blue turn. Let's go to red turn, right? So we're going to have 2 CP for Eldrad, and they're going to have 1 CP. Doesn't really matter for our example, but we draw our secondaries anyway. We can extend and cleanse. So cleanse, pretty easy. We can easily score that if we go first with some rangers. And look at that, we get extend as well with the rangers. So no big deal there. We can score some good points on this. And if we cleanse 2 objectives, we get max points. So we're going to go for that. And it's just going to be a simple thing of moving to this objective, cleansing it, and then moving to this objective, cleansing it. And that's it, right? Okay. So we go first. First thing we're going to do, move the rangers. We want to be able to screen with the rangers, but we also want to be able to cleanse. So all you have to do here to be able to do that is we're going to move a single ranger right here, edge of this objective. Boom. Again, they can't overwatch us because this big piece of terrain is in the way. And we're going to move up with the rest of the unit. We don't want to get into overwatch range because that's an easy kill for them. So we're just going to go right on the other side of this. We're going to go boom. Oh, let's make sure that's 2 inches. That's 2.2. So we'll move this guy just barely up right here. Still towing the objective there. So now they're within 2 inches of each other. Perfect. And again, these guys move 7, and you can easily spend a token on them as well if you want them to move a little farther. But we're just going to basically do this. Boom. All right. Okay, so there's our movement. Again, we're kind of just preventing the intercessors from being able to get out of this wall, and we're kind of able to also cleanse at the same time. This Brutalis can't get through, right? Anything flying, of course, can get through, but we have a plan for that as well, and I'll explain what the plan is in just a second. So the next thing we're going to do, this squad with the Autarch is going to advance. We're just going to roll d6 for that advance. And again, with Banshees, we can, of course, re-roll this. So 3 is enough. And we're going to go ahead and give them a token for +2. So that's going to be 5 in total, which will make us move 13 inches. Now that's going to, maybe we don't even need that. Maybe we don't even need the token. Let's see. 13. 13's right about here. So we didn't really, yeah, the token was fine. We can do this. We can move 12. We only really needed about an extra inch or so. So we're going to just move right here. I think that's good right there. Yeah, that's fine. So we're going to move as close as possible to this ruin right here, right? Now, as you notice, they have a ball predator here. Now, the ball predator actually moves really fast. Be careful about these things because they have movement 12 and they can advance and shoot. And they can re-roll advance rolls. So on average, they're getting like at least 5 inches on their advance roll. So you can count on a 5, right? Which, with a pivot, which they will probably have to do, but let's just go ahead and pretend for a second. So that's right there, that's 9 inches. Okay, and then we're going to move it back. Don't worry, they didn't pivot, so they get 3 more inches of movement with their normal move. And then we can add 5 to that. Now here's the good news. No matter what they roll, even if they roll a 6, that is not going to be enough to kill the banshees on turn 1. Okay, I just wanted to point that out to everybody so you guys know it's not enough. And honestly, you can't really advance and charge, and it's like 11 inches anyway. So they're not going to be able to like do some crazy tank shock stuff with you, right? So that's not going to happen typically, and they're not going to realistically be in range to do that. So boom, ball predator's back where it was, so we're safe there. What about this ball predator? Well, let's go ahead and see where this ball predator can move. It can move about, let's say 10 inches right here, right? And then it can move, 8 more inches essentially, right? Or not 8 more inches, 7 more inches on average, right? So we're going to move up to here. So from this position, even if we have another inch, do we have line of sight on the banshees? That is the question. We do not. We do not. Now, having said that, you don't want to move anything here because it will be able to see it and shoot it and kill it. So we pretty much know that that's the case. So this ball predator could move out here, right? Could get the objective on turn 2. Is a good player going to do that? Probably not. I would be very surprised if something like this valuable moved out to kill some rangers. All right, so they're not going to do that. So essentially, long story short, if we go first on their first turn, right, the second turn of the game, they're not going to be able to threaten the units that they need to threaten, even if we don't move block them turn 1. So it's not critical on turn 1 that we start move blocking with warp spiders, right? It's just not needed yet, but it will be. So just hang on. Okay, so we've settled that. So we move up the rangers. They're going to do the objectives. And I made a little mistake here. These guys can't cleanse. I forgot they advanced, so we're not going to do that. Guess what is going to cleanse, though, right? We're going to just have this Warlock Skyrunner move up. 12 inches. Love the Warlock Skyrunner. We're just going to cleanse. Now, what we could do also is we could be a little bit cheeky, and we can move on this side with not an advance roll, but a token. And we can just wait here. And this is actually really important. So again, like we said, the ball predator can't shoot this, okay? And actually, it's in the rules. You'll have to trust me, bro, on this one, right? It's in the erratas and FAQ, but models with flying bases, like Warlock Skyrunners, they have a flying base, but they're not vehicles, so they don't have a hull, can actually be the model itself, not the base, but the model itself can be over the footprint of the ruin and still count as being behind the footprint of the ruin for purposes of line of sight. So your opponent can't just say, oh, your little jet bike thing is hanging over this. That means I can shoot it. No, you still have to, to be able to shoot this thing, you still have to be able to draw line of sight from your base to your opponent's base without being, obscured by the ruin footprint. So you still can't do it. So we're going to put it right here. And again, measurement from this guy, it's always going to be from the base. You measure from the base for movement and movement purposes and stuff like that. Okay, so there we are, right? Warlock Skyrunner sitting pretty right there. Cleanse uses the +2 of the token to get up there. And so we've used 2 tokens so far. Again, no big deal during the first turn. Warwalker can move up if it wants, or it can chill right here. Just depends on what you want to do. And we're going to move our 2 Dark Reaper units up right here. So we're going to move them up in a way that puts them right up against the wall, right? So we're going to just pick them up and just make sure they're right up tight against the wall there. Boom. I don't know why that happens. I'm so sorry. God, whatever. You guys get the idea, right? I don't know. You know what it is? It's the collision on some of these ruins is a little bit deeper than it should be, but we're going to put these guys right up against here. We're going to just go ahead and flip these guys up, and they're going to do the same thing. All right. They're going to do the exact same thing. And we may even move them kind of like more like this so that our opponent can't get good line of sight on them during the next turn. Because, again, we don't want them to get fried. And if we have a ball predator that's right here, technically speaking, if it rolls really good on its advance, it gets like to here, it might be able to see the Dark Reapers. So we have to be careful, right? We have to make sure that our Dark Reapers are out of line of sight. So again, there's a way to do this on regular boards to just have them be base to base without just messing up the collision here. But anyway, okay. So we're kind of like this. Nothing can see us. We're all good. They can't get that far and still shoot. Actually, I think it might even be outside of 18 inches. Yeah, it's outside of 18 inches, which is perfect. So Dark Reapers are right here. Warp Spiders are gonna just chill here. I know that seems really weird, but you know, you can kind of position it a little bit like this if you wanted to create a little bit more room. But Warp Spiders are going to be here for a reason. Warwalker is right here. Now, if you're worried about something charging through here, like for example, if you're worried about scouts charging into these guys, we have our Shroud Runners for that. They can easily move block. They can move in front of here and just create a kind of a, kind of a wall here to prevent charges. Or we could even use them to cleanse and choose to move this ranger up here, which will block, some movement from other things. It's really up to you what you do. Depends on your opponent, depends on a lot of things. But, we can move our Shroud Runners accordingly, right? If we go first. We get a scout move, and then we can move again. So actually, something I like to do is if we see a scout unit right here, right, behind this wall, what I like to do is I like to just test to see how far what I can get away with. So we can move 9 inches right here. And then if we want to just kind of move 14. Now, what this does allow your opponent to do is it allows them to overwatch if you don't do the no overwatch token. So what we might want to do is the no overwatch token. We move here, right? We're on the objective. And again, scout 9. You always want to, that's a little bit too, not enough, right? There we go. And then we move our 14 inches, which should be right, yep, right behind there. We're just going to move our full distance here, 14. Boom. And then our last model, Scout 9, right about here. I know there's a stupid sandbag in the way, but usually that's not a problem. And then we're going to move our 14 inches, and we're going to put our 14-inch right here behind here. And we're still going to get line of sight because this model's base can see these guys. So we have our 3 Shroud Runners right here. We've made them immune to Overwatch, and now we're going to go ahead and shoot the scouts. So 3 sniper rifles, 3 scatter lasers into scouts. Again, they're getting cover, but they're really not that tough. And we're probably going to kill quite a few of them. And if we're lucky, we may even be able to, not charge in, but we can charge in and not die, and then we can get this objective on turn 1. If we hold that, we're going to be able to make some, we're going to be able to make a big play. We're not going to be able to hold it, don't worry. There's lots of stuff that can charge in and kill it, but we can put our position, our opponent's positions a little bit off. So I love Shroud Runners for that. And if you're wondering, that's why I included them into the list, because they're really good at like early game plays. Warwalker here can simply, just move up here, or it can move, just stay here. It doesn't really matter. We have our Warp Spiders here. We could put them here. But again, like I said before, it doesn't really matter too much. We could just, kind of move them over a little bit here. Make it a little bit easier for us to, be able to move them later. Warlock Skyrunners here for a very good reason, just being able to provide a bubble for being a psyker so that we can target all of our guys with strats. And then we're going to just simply move our Reapers up like this a little bit so that they have a better position for later on, right? So they can move their 6 inches and get out of here with the token if they need to. But they don't have to if you go first, because that's kind of the advantage of, going first in an army like this. So we move up. Fire Dragons, again, we're just going to scooch them forward a little bit. We don't really have to worry too much about anything really charging into us turn 1, because we've pretty much covered what we need to on turn 1. They're not going to be able to really do anything. And we actually blocked their Ball Predator with the Shroud Runners from being able to do too much either, because, they're not going to be able to move a ball predator through here now because of the 1 inch engagement rule. Okay, so we have this set up. We have our Storm Guardians here. So we're going to actually, there's a couple things we can do with this Storm Guardian unit. We can leave them here, or we can teleport them from here to here, since we've blocked that off from that ball predator. Now, it's up to you. It just depends on how fast you think your opponent's going to move, but we could always react to it later on, right? If we want to teleport them on turn 2 to protect this, it just really, again, depends what your opponent is going to do with that. And these guys are going to remain back here, and actually a good kind of strategy to do with these guys is to actually move them something like this. So if your opponent has any reserves or is going to bring anything in on your board edge, you could easily just screen them out with this squad of 10 fire dragons. And then later on in the game, you can use this squad of 10 fire dragons to pop their vehicles. Okay, so we went ahead, we moved all our guys, we got into position with the stuff. Now, let me explain why we moved these guys up here and why we moved all this stuff, right? So, here is the bait, right? This first turn is our setup. So what we're going to do is we're going to start targeting this infiltrator unit, and then every unit within 3 inches is going to have to take potentially mortal wounds. So let's go ahead and do that right now. We're going to fire first with Malgan Raw so we can maximize that. And let's just see what's within 3 inches of this infiltrator unit. Now, if your opponent knows you have something like this, they will do their best to spread out, but it's not always going to be possible. And on the first turn, you can potentially get a lot of mortal wounds out of this and really weaken their army for the rest of the game. Because again, we're trying to create value. So we're over here. We're going to do our 3 inches, or you know what, we should do it for them, shouldn't we? 3 inches right here. Boom, 3-inch bubble. And again, everything within range is going to take hits. So we got these intercessors. We got this ball predator. We don't have the brutalis, but we have this ball predator. We have this unit of death company. We have this unit of sanguinary guard, and we have this unit of sanguinary guard. So let's go ahead and roll. It's going to be 5 up for each of them. So let's roll for the infiltrators first. The infiltrators take D3 mortal wounds. Let's see how many mortal wounds they take. They take 1, and they get a 6 up, feel no pain, which they do make, so the infiltrators aren't affected. Let's see about these intercessors over here. They're also going to take shrapnel. How many mortal wounds do they take? They take 2, and that's just going to be 1 dead. So it's probably not going to be the sergeant, probably going to be this guy. So we've killed 1 so far. Then we're going to go ahead and do the death company. Let's see if they take them. Nope. What about the 2 ball predators? Ball predator number 1. Yes. How many mortal wounds? 1. So it just takes 1 wound. So we just put 1 wound on that ball predator. Again, it might seem like it's not many wounds, but at the end of the game, it's going to matter. It's going to matter later on. This ball predator takes, God, I'm rolling crazy. Takes how many mortals? 2. And it seems like I'm getting really lucky here, but the truth of the matter is that this could easily happen when you're rolling this against this many units. All right, now it's probably not going to hit really anything else. So sanguinary guard, does it hit them? No. And we already rolled for everything else. We rolled for the 2 ball predators, so it affected 3, didn't affect them, didn't affect the death company, didn't affect their own unit because they made the save. And we are in range of this squad here. Do we get the other sanguinary guard squad? No, we don't. So there we go. Honestly, pretty average, I think, for how many units we had. It affected so it affected 3 units out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's a little bit above average, but you know, it is what it is. And we didn't do any damage to the infiltrators, so I would say that that's probably pretty average there. At least within reasonable amounts, right? So we did some pretty good damage there. Now we're going to go ahead and roll for the Tempest Launcher against the squad of infiltrators. It gets 9 + 1, so that's going to be 10 attacks. Again, we're hitting on 4s. We're not really hitting that great because, you know, it's indirect fire. So we're going to be missing all these. We're going to need 4s to wound here. We're only getting 1, and do they make their save? They get a 3-up. They do make their save. All right. The 2 other units of Dark Reapers are going to have a choice now. We can either fire into the infiltrators again, which is reasonable. We'll probably kill at least one of them, or we can go for something else. We can go for like scouts or something like that. I'm actually going to say we're going to go for scouts because we're not going to probably kill all of them. And if we measure the line of sight that we have here, we can actually pretty much see all the scouts anyway. So there's a really good chance that we can eliminate these guys out of the game right off the bat. And then if there's like 1 left, we can charge it, we can get on the objective, and we can, kind of force our opponent to make a decision about what they want to do. So we're going to measure our ranges. Again, if we're not in range, fine, we're going to shoot something else, but we easily are, right? Our first Dark Reaper exarch's right there. Our second one's right here. We easily, with 36 inches, have that. So 2d6 on the first exarch. 5, it's going to be 5 plus 1. So we get our dice here. Rolling to hit, only 2 hits. That's fine. Rolling to wound. We get both the wounds. Do they make their 4-up saves? They miss 1. So that's 1 wound so far on the squad. Let's do 2d6 more for the second exarch. Not great. We're not rolling great on this, but that's okay. We get 4 attacks here, or 5 attacks. Blast plus 1. Hitting on 4s. Okay, better hit roll. Whoops. And wounding on 4s, nothing. Okay, so we're only doing 1 wound. That's fine. Typically, it's like 1 kill, but that's okay. So our scout is going to take 1 wound. Someone's going to take 1 wound. All right. Now our Shroud Runners get a fire. So they get 18 shots, and Shroud Runners are really good at actually picking off low armor stuff like scouts. So here we go. And we have an option here, and I think we're going to take it. We're going to use, or no, sorry, we're not going to be able to do it. Their ignore cover ability doesn't affect themselves. Just remember that. So, rolling our dice, hitting on 3s with sustained hits. All right. Pretty good. We're going to have sustained hit 6. Boom. And we need 3s to wound here. Cool. We're going to force 11 saves on a 3-up against them, and they're going to roll it. And they're going to fail just enough to kill 3 of them. So remember, the 1 already took the wound. So 1, 2, 3. And then we get our sniper rifles, right? 1, 2, 3. Get our snipers here. I don't know what that's doing there. I guess that's from the roll before. 3 sniper rifles hitting on 2s. 1 misses. Sniper rifles hitting on 2s is awesome, by the way. And then 4 is the wound. Oh well, we don't get it. No big deal. So, they have a Scout Sergeant, which I don't think the Scout Sergeant gets anything special for melee weapons. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think they do. So, yeah, we're going to go ahead and charge in because these guys don't really have a shot in hell of killing even 1 Shroud Runner, to be honest. So, we're going to go ahead and go for it. So, these are dead. These guys are doing action, so we can't really shoot anything else. And we go ahead and charge in. Easy charge to make. I'm just going to roll it just in case. Whoops. Sorry. Well, let's say it's a 4. Let's say it's the worst of the bunch, right? So we charge in 4 inches. We got our 4 inches right here. 4 inches right here. And we could just move this guy into base with one of our own models because, again, at this point, our bases can't fit. So we're just going to have to move right here. Whoops, close as possible, but also in engagement, right? So we're in base to base with a model that's in base to base. Okay, so we, consolidate. We can move this guy over a little bit more to the center here, and we can go ahead and do our 3 little attacks, which aren't going to do anything. They hit on, wow, they all hit. What? Oh my God. All right, we get 2, we get 2 wounds here. And they fail both their saves. I cannot believe it. This would be a great moment in the game where the guy's like really upset about this. Okay, that's fine. We'll take it. We had some bad luck on our Tempest launchers, so what goes around comes around. They get their 2 attacks back. Hitting on 3s. wounding on 4s. They get 1 wound. We get a 5-up save against them, and we don't make it, of course, so we take a wound on a Shroud Runner. So here we go. Wound on a Shroud Runner. There we go. All right. So here's what happened. Here's our first turn. Killed the scouts that were trying to, block us from being able to get on this objective. Killed them. Shroud Runners made a good name for themselves. They're not going to really trade up, but again, we're grabbing an objective, so they have to react to that. So in my book, I would say we actually succeeded in doing something against them. I guess this guy can, maybe consolidate closer to the objective if we want, but that's not a big deal. These Rangers cleansed, and they're blocking the Brutalis from really getting anywhere. And again, if the Brutalis does move up, we can, of course, move accordingly with our Ranger move. Oh, and by the way, the funny thing about this, right? This, if you're fearing that this Ball Predator comes over here and like tries to get an angle on something like this, it just can't, because your opponent's going to have to move the intercessors first, right? So your Rangers are going to immediately move, and you can move D6 this way and just block them off, right? So there's a way to do that. Anyway, so we are now set up perfectly for their turn 1. So let's just assume, right? They're infiltrators. We're not going to put the 3-inch bubbles on them anymore. We're going to get rid of that. And let's go on to their turn 1. So we've scored all the possible points we can score. We've scored extend for 4, right? Because we control our home and we control 1 in the center, so we get our extend. And we got our cleanse for, 5. Totally forgot about that change. Cool. So we get our 2 secondaries. That's the max amount of points we could have gotten anyway. Their turn, right? We pass turn to them. I don't know why this is not letting me do it, but whatever. It's their turn. And there we go. All right, they draw their secondaries, and they get overwhelming force, and they get storm hostile objective. Okay, so here's the thing, right? This is a good roll for them. They're going to be able to score 3 on overwhelming or 6 actually, or max of 5, because we have a Shroud Runner unit and we have a Ranger unit. And they're going to be able to do storm hostile objective, right? That's just what they're going to be able to do if they control 1 or more objective markers. So they're going to get, they're going to get a good roll here too. They're going to get about the same amount of points as us. However, this kind of forces them into doing exactly what I kind of wanted them to do anyway, which was engage the Rangers, kill them, and also kill the Shroud Runners, which is going to drain their resources. And this is what the army is all about. So they can come over here, right? With this Ball Predator, they can come over here. They can fall back with this dude. But if they fall back, remember, I have a token. I could move with these Shroud Runners. And possibly what that means is I'm going to be able to move into a position that is unfavorable for the Ball Predator. Or they can move and these Rangers move to block it off, right? So they don't have a lot of good options here. And they're basically going to be forced into a position again where they're on their expansion and they're on their home, but they have units out here in the middle that we can easily take out. And they're not going to be able to kill what's right here. Because as soon as they go for this, so see this unit right here? Let's see this unit of intercessors. They can't really get close to the Rangers again, because if they move, the Rangers are going to move. But if the assault intercessors try to do anything against the banshees and they have assault, advance in charge, then watch what happens here. So we have to measure the movement really quick. Let's say they roll their advance roll. And they roll a 6. Great roll. Excellent, right? And with a 6, you would think that your opponent would be super happy about that, being able to move 18 inches right here, right? They could move right here, right on the other side of the wall, get right up to the, your opponent. Here is the issue. We are Seer Council. We put this guy here for a reason. We can now blast this unit with Ish's Fury, probably for free, right? Because we rolled our... Let's just roll that really quick just to see what we would get. Of course, it's probably going to be terrible now, but let's see. Okay, perfect. Boom. We got Ish's Fury, which I believe is number 4. I think it's number 4. But anyway, let's... You can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. It doesn't really matter for this example, because we're going to kind of stop talking about it after this turn. But we got Ish's Fury off, so we're going to use a free strat for that. Plus we have, you know, at this point, we're going to have 3 command points. So we're Seer Council. We don't care. We're going to go ahead and roll 6 dice. And on 3+, they're just going to take mortals. They're going to take 3 of them. Right away, they're going to take 3. So we got this guy dead, and this guy's going to take a wound. If we want to, we can also Overwatch with the Warlock Skyrunner as well. Again, it's not probably that big of a deal, but we probably deal 1 more wound with that, if that's going to happen. So maybe we deal... I wouldn't... Well, yeah, we could, huh? Let's just Overwatch. Screw it. Right? We might as well. We have so many command points. We can just Overwatch for free, essentially, right? For 1 command point. Boom. Overwatch. Roll our dice. 5 attacks. Are we close enough to another Psyker? No, we're not. I don't think so. Yeah, we're not close enough to that, so that's not going to matter. We get 5 attacks. 3's to wound. Look at that. Makes up for the bad Ish's Fury roll. And they're going to have to take this many 4-up saves. And look at that. They missed 2 of them. So we're going to kill this guy. And we're going to get rid of probably another wound on this dude. You do get to throw the Singing Spear and the Shuriken Catapult as well. So let's just see what that does. Shuriken Catapult doesn't hit. Singing Spear doesn't hit. Makes sense. Sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't. Okay, so there you go. You have killed pretty much half the unit, right? With those 2 stratagems. So we get rid of these guys. Now they have a real problem, because 3 of them is really not going to be enough to even affect this objective, right? So even with a shooting attack, which I don't think they can even make because they advanced. Yeah, the heavy bolt pistol that they have does not have assault, so middle finger to them. These guys now get to move if this was the first unit to move. But let's just assume that they're going to do this, right? Ball Predator moves over here, advances. This is exactly what I would do at this point in the game. I would advance over here, try to get to this side so we can just be outside of 1 inch of these guys. And then I would use my fallback with the scout. I would just go to here. And I would just try to kill these, right? With the Ball Predator. The Dreadnought is really not going to be able to do much because the Rangers are here. And since we've moved this already, we can now reactive move with the Rangers. So let's go ahead and do that. 3 inches. That works. So we're going to make it even harder for our opponent to do anything. So we're going to move the Rangers kind of this way. All right, 3 inches this way. 3. Staying away from the wall so that our, you know, again, 1.1, it's not going to fully help us, but it's going to help us in the ways that we need to be helped. So we're going to go ahead and do this. Whoops, that's a little too far. I think that was probably too far too. That's okay. We're just going to get like something like this. 3 inches. And lastly, 3 inches. We're going to move right to here. So if our opponent wants to charge us, now that they can't just consolidate onto the objective, right? So that's going to be a little harder for them to do. They're going to have to move something on this objective if they want to take it. And they are going to score points for killing, right? Because they have Storm Hostile objective. They are going to just get that because, you know, the Shroud Runners are on there. And they can get probably overwhelming force as well. However, we're going to make it a little bit harder for them because... remember, these guys fell back. So what we can do, we can use another token and we can roll up. Look at that. Beautiful. We're going to go ahead and get this unit out of the way. So, right? Because they wouldn't have been able to shoot if they fell back. So what we're going to just do, I feel so scummy sometimes for playing Eldar, but hey, that's the Eldar life. So we're going to move, you know, let's say we just move 2 inches like this, and then we just go like this the rest of the 5. We're not going to get all of them out of range here, but we can at least get, you know, most of them. With a roll of a 6, we can get them really, really far out. So I'm going to move this guy like this. Yeah, let's say he's like, yeah, I can move 4.7, which means I can move 3 or, yeah, 2.7. Oh my God. Guys, we almost did it. We almost got everyone out of line of sight. That's a shame. Oh well. We weren't able to fully get it, and we couldn't move to the other side. It was just too much movement. So they're going to be able to shoot us, but that's fine. Maybe we survive. We'll see. Okay, so they moved there. Totally fine. Okay. Sanguinor, to be honest, no one's going to risk the Sanguinor, so maybe the Sanguinor with his lone operative just does this. And personally, I think intercessors are going to kill the rangers, so we're just going to, they're probably going to move up here with the intercessors. This is what I would do as a Marine player. I would just try to shoot them, but at the same, like, get everyone to have line of sight on this single ranger, but try to have the rest of them hidden. This ball predator, I would just move up to here because there's no point in moving it further. All right, they're going to, you know, assault intercessors are probably just going to take up the same position. Maybe these guys, like, go over here or something like that, right? Try to be in a position where they can assault the middle or whatever. They advance, of course. Sanguinary Guard, let's just bring them like this over here. And again, they're going to try to spread out a little bit, but as you guys can see, they really can't do it that well, can they? So maybe this squad goes like over here. Or shoot, maybe they just go here, right? They're an insurance. I think pretty much with an advance roll, I'm pretty sure they can get from like here to here. Yeah, that's pretty easy. So let's, again, we're not going to be rolling all these because it's going to take forever. So we're just going to go like that. Should have been 1 inch out of that guy. So probably like right there. Cool. Infiltrators at this point, probably going to stay there just to stop me from coming into their backfield. But we're going to start to move up Dante and their units. Try to get into a better position here. Boom. Ball Predator right here. Probably, again, going to stay back just to kind of defend. I would even say just provide overwatch against anything trying to get back here. And then this squad, I personally would put them like right here and advance them up. Again, that's just either here or here. Well, maybe we'll put them right there. There we go. Oh, and Mephiston, I totally forgot about him. He's going up here. Oh. Alrighty, so what's going to happen next? Well, their shooting phase is going to happen, and these rangers are going to disappear. Goodbye, rangers. That'll give them 3 on overwhelming force because, again, we needed to do an objective with them because we went first, so they're going to get the points back. They're also going to kill these Shroud Runners. I'm not under any, you know, illusions about this. However, there is something sneaky we can do, right? This Ball Predator, if it fires first, it gets its Flame Storm Cannon, which is D6 plus 3. And it gets 2 Heavy Flamers, which are D6 each, right? Then it does have a Storm Bolter and a Hunter Killer Missile, but they're probably not going to do that much. And I don't think the Storm Bolter has Assault. No, it doesn't. It doesn't have Assault, so I don't even think it gets to shoot, and neither does the Hunter Killer. So let's just fire the Flame Storm and the 2 Flamers, because they're going to get Assault. So, D6 plus 3. Well, that was, you know, womp womp. I guess we're going to have to take the full blast of it. It's going to wound on 3s, because it's strength 6. So we're going to take this many invul saves. Let's just see if we can make them. Unfortunately, we don't. So we're going to lose 1 Shroud Runner, 2 Shroud Runners, and our last Shroud Runner is going to be at 1 wound. Unfortunately, I think the regular Flamers are going to take out the last one, but let's just see. Again, you could get lucky on that roll if they low roll, but yeah, these guys are done. So in this particular game, they're done, but if you get lucky, they can survive, and then they can run away. Okay, so they got their Storm Hostile objective pretty down pat, and they're going to get also, overwhelming force on a 5. So they're going to kill those 2 units, but this is fine. And as we see, we now have a pretty good ability to attack. So we have successfully baited out. Oh, we need to do this. Okay, so this unit, again, I don't think a really good player does this with the intercessors, but they kind of have no choice because they have to make room in their army, right? So maybe they just charge in. They're gonna be able to get their 3 little attacks in or whatever. They could charge this guy, but then we just heroically intervene for free. So again, it really doesn't matter what they do here. They get their 3 impact attacks. They deal 2 wounds. So yeah, they charge in, they kill 2. The easy solution of this is just take out 1 Howling Banshee and put a wound on the Exarch. No big deal. And we're going to just wipe them in return, right? So they just get wiped. So they essentially didn't get any value out of that unit. And that's, by the way, guys, that's how you hold primary with Eldar. A lot of people are like, how do I hold primary with Eldar? This is how, right? You just put a unit that has fights first next to something that can also deal some good overwatch or something like that, and you just totally obliterate this. If we had also made the decision to transport Eldrad and Guardians over here, we would have just blown that unit out of the water. But we also wanted to kind of bait our opponent in to give them the illusion that they had a chance of doing something. So that was also, playing into it for me. But this next turn, you're definitely going to move Eldrad over here and support the Banshees. And yeah, basically, if we want to go into our, turn and what we do, we just move block here, right? We move our Warp Spiders, we make them immune to Overwatch. Boom, we close this off so that the Ball Predator can't get over here. Yes, the Ball Predator can move around this way, but the only thing they're going to be able to really target is the Warwalker, and we're just going to move that out of the way on our turn. We're continuing to fire our indirect fire, and at some point it's going to start being direct fire into the units over here. We can kill these intercessors pretty easily. We just have to move these Dark Reapers into this position, and we have direct line of sight. Kill this whole unit. And yeah, that's pretty much it. We're on our way to having a fantastic game against an opponent that just can't really do a lot against us, and we're going to end up eventually winning the game in a pretty big way, right? These Death Company, for example, are going to take a good chunk of damage from Warp Spiders, and if they move, they get overwatched by Warp Spiders. That's not going to be fun. We could even try to take out Mephiston. I wouldn't recommend trying because he has a Feel No Pain 4+, but you can definitely do some wounds to him. He does only have 6 wounds, so I guess it's possible to kill him on a high roll. I would probably just go for the Death Company, though, and just leave him here. And once they start moving out with the Ball Predators, we got our Fire Dragons. We got Fire Dragons here to take care of those. So, yeah, that's basically the bait and switch strategy. And then late in the game, once we, we're going to kill these guys eventually, or this backfield is going to kind of thin out. We can drop our big unit of Storm Guardians either on this side or this side, and we could just take them out. If they never move out their models, well, they're just not going to be able to win at that point, right? Because they're going to have too much value back here, and they're not going to be fighting over these objectives, and we are eventually going to win because we're going to outvalue our opponent. All right, guys, that's going to be it for our Tabletop Simulator example. And let me know in the comments if you guys like these kind of talks about, what our opponent's going to do, what we're going to do in response, and stuff like that. All right, back to the video in just a second. Alrighty, everybody, we are back from Tabletop Simulator, and I hope that was at least a little bit educational for you guys on how to play the Seer Council. So, great thing about Seer Council, guys, is it is really flexible. If you want to switch out a couple of units in this list, for example, if you want to change the Tempest launchers to missile launchers, I know they didn't really do much during the first turn, but trust me, guys, Tempest launchers are not a one and done kind of thing. They're usually going to take at least 3 or 4 turns to be able to wheedle out enough models in your opponent's army that you can actually teleport in the back lanes, if at all, right? There's some matchups where you're just not going to be able to use the Tempest launchers like that, but they do put pressure on your opponent. They do weaken their units considerably over the course of the game, and they make it easier to trade with, right? I mean, as we know, even one Space Marine can sometimes mean the difference between losing a combat and winning one, right? So, the Tempest launchers are a good pick. But if you don't want the Tempest launchers, you can definitely go with missile launchers instead. I really don't think it kind of matters too much. I just prefer the Tempest launchers in this setup. But in other detachments, I do tend to go for the missile launchers. It's just, it happens to be that Seer Council is the exception to this. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed, and let me know what I can do better about, these videos. I personally think that these videos are kind of like an easy way to explain how to run an army, how to build it up, and then, the strategy behind it. But let me know if I can make any improvements, and I definitely will. As for the list, I'm going to go ahead and, since I've shown it to you on screen, I'm going to go ahead and put it in the Discord as well. You can DM me if you're interested in the list, and if you want to maybe try it out, I can maybe, play a game against some of you if you want a little bit of more of a taste of it. Or, you can play that list yourself, and I can play something similar to, Blood Angels or Death Guard or whatever you want to face, and we'll kind of see how it goes. Having said that, I do offer games and, both coaching games and coaching sessions for people who are Patreons at the Court of the Archon level, or Court of the Young King. Sorry, Court of the Archon. What a great unit. But yeah, Court of the Young King level for the Patreon. That is $20 a month. Basically, that gives you the ability to play games against me whenever you want and get coaching sessions from me so that you can improve as an Aeldari player. Also, I have a Patreon, of course, with free access to our Discord. So if you want to just join for free, join the Discord for free, you can sign up for a free membership and you will get permanent access to our Discord community. I also want to remind you guys that the Eldar Knight Kickstarter project is live. If you want more information on that, check out the link in the description for the Kickstarter. And, if you want to support it, that would be awesome. Really appreciate it. We're coming close to the end of that campaign. So it'd be really awesome if we can get the funds we need to, pay artists and STLs and, get all the stuff ready for the release of the fan decks. Other than that, I have a channel store page if you want to check out some Eldar inspired apparel, aspect warrior signs of the craft worlds, all that good lore stuff. Check it out. It's 25% off currently, so pretty good deal on Aeldari shirts, beanies, hats, and so forth. And lastly, I do have an Amazon affiliate link if you want to grab some discounted Eldar minis. All right, everybody, that's going to be it for today's video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one, everybody. Peace out.